Hi there, my name is Ed Lieberman, and I want to welcome you to the Windows Server 2008 MCITP Server Administrator course. Now in this first video, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and about train signal training as a whole. Then I'm going to go through and break down each video and talk to you about exactly what we're going to cover in this course. After that, we're going to look at a company called Global Mantics. And I'm going to give you the big picture scenario surrounding this company because this is the company that I will use to help explain the different technologies as we go through this course. Finally, I'm going to tell you exactly what you will need if you want to follow along with me through the different videos in this course while you're learning. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. Well, as I said before, my name is Ed Lieberman, and as you can see from the alphabet soup under my name, over the years I have taken all sorts of various certification exams and have managed to rack up a bunch of different IT certifications. But the one that I want you to pay the closest attention to would be right here, the MCITP, which stands for Microsoft Certified IT Professional. And the reason why is because this course was designed to help you prepare for the 70-646 exam, which should be the last exam that you would take to obtain your MCITP Server Administrator certification. Now, I say the last exam you would take because there are some other exams that go along with the certification, but I'll cover all of that in a certification video at the end of this course. So what else can I tell you about myself? Well, I have been working with technology in some way, shape, or form for the last 18, 19 years or so. And I'll tell you what, when I first got into the industry, I was working for an Apple dealer who put high-end Macintosh solutions together for our clients. After that, I moved to another company where we didn't have any Macintoshes at all, and we worked strictly with PCs. Now, in that company, I really didn't have a formal IT position. I just happened to be the guy that knew about computers. Now, you might be able to relate with this. I know there's a lot of us out there that fall into that same category. Don't really have an official IT title with a company, but if you know a lot about computers, well, then everyone's going to ask you. Well, that's kind of where I was. So about 10 or 11 years ago, I made a decision to go ahead and formalize everything. I decided to go ahead and take some courses and get some IT certifications so that I could get an actual official IT job. And what happened was while I was a student taking the courses to get my certification, I found everything to come fairly naturally and went around the room and helped my peers. And in doing so, my instructor pulled me aside and said, "Hey, you know what? You're pretty good at this helping others thing. Do you have an interest in teaching?" And I really didn't have an interest in teaching at the time. I just thought I was going to go ahead and get my certifications and go ahead and work as a network administrator. But I decided, you know what? I really do like helping people, so I'll give it a shot. Well, I gave it a shot, found that I really did love it, and that's pretty much what I've been doing for the last decade or so. Is I have been primarily teaching IT professionals how to do their jobs, how to get certified, etc., etc. Now, when I'm not in the classroom, there's a couple different things that I'm doing. One is I go out and occasionally do some independent consulting for small to medium-sized companies, help them with their networking needs. And the other thing that I do, I really love this part, is that I try to volunteer as much time as I can in my local community as a math tutor for children who are struggling to understand math. See, math is something that also came naturally to me as a child and has continued throughout my life. And I've also noticed that a lot of the children who struggle do so not so much because they just can't do math, but because they just haven't had anyone there to really show them a way to make it fun and interesting. Now let me tell you a little bit about train signal training. The first thing I want to tell you is that we use a casual training method. And what I mean by that is we don't worry so much about specific formalities that you might find with different training companies. When I taught in the classroom, I can tell you that there were a lot of formalities that we were required to do, even though as instructors we really knew that it didn't seem to have a whole lot of impact on our students. So one of the things that I really like about how we do things here at TrainSignal is that we just focus on telling you how things work and showing you how things work and letting you learn that way. Just telling you what you absolutely need to know. The second thing I want to tell you about TrainSignal training is that whenever possible, we try to use scenario-based training. And that's where I mentioned just a little while ago, and we're going to cover this next, is that Global Mantix company. Well, that's the scenario that I'm going to use throughout this course to try to help you understand the different technologies. Because we find that when you can relate it to a scenario, it will help it to sink in, rather than just reading through a book and going through the black and white. This is how things work. Here's the step by step. If we can throw a little bit of a, well, here's where you might use this, hopefully you'll be able to grasp it a little bit easier. All right, so what exactly are we going to cover in this course? Well, the video after this one, video 2, we will start off by talking about Windows Server 2008 installation and upgrade. After that, we will see how to simplify installation by using Windows Deployment Services, or WDS. Then I'll talk to you a little bit about installing a special version of Windows Server 2008 called Server Core. After that, we'll talk about deploying read-only domain controllers. Now, the last video, not in the course, but in what I consider to be kind of the first section here, will be on virtualization, where we can install many virtual computers on a single physical computer. So everything in those 5 videos is going to be kind of about installation or deployment. After that, we'll move along and talk about using group policy to simplify your network administration. Right? Once you have everything deployed, well, then we have to administrate it all. And group policy is something that we can use to help make our lives a little bit easier in that category. Then I'll talk to you about something called delegation of control, where we can go ahead and make it that you don't have to have just one person who does everything. You can go ahead and delegate out different administrative tasks to different individuals throughout a company, including, believe it or not, maybe even some non-IT employees. Then I'll talk to you about how to set up a file and print server. Then we go into data provisioning, where we'll take a look at how to make our data readily available even in a global network. After that, I'll show you how to set up a VPN server, talk to you about the network policy server, where we can actually have some control over people who are making connectivity with our network. Then I'll talk to you about Windows Server Update Services, or what's sometimes just simply known as WSUS, and how we can use it to help keep our systems up to date. Talk about using Active Directory certificate services. We'll go into backup and recovery. And we'll take a look at how to deploy terminal services. And then see how to plan for something called high availability, meaning making your servers, well, we could say always available, or at least as available as possible. Thus the name high availability. After all that, we'll wrap things up, as I mentioned a few moments ago, by talking to you about Microsoft certification as a whole. All right, so now that we know exactly what the technologies are that we're going to talk about in this course, let's go ahead and talk about this Global Mantix Corporation, which we will use to help explain some of the technologies throughout the course. Now, I will tell you, this is just going to be a generic overview of the company, and as we go through each video, I will give you more specifics that relate to that specific technology. So, just to give you a little bit of background behind the company, Global Mantix is a worldwide securities brokerage house headquartered in New York, but they also have 3 satellite locations. They have one in Chicago, which they use for the Chicago exchanges, one in Tokyo for the Asian markets, and then a small branch office in Dallas, which was created because the boss is a native Texan and really doesn't like being in New York. He wants to be home in Texas. So that's what the Dallas office is primarily used for. Now, there are currently 640 employees scattered throughout the different locations. So this is kind of a medium to large size company. 500 of these employees are in the New York headquarters. And then 50 are out in Tokyo, 80 in Chicago, and then like I said before, we have the small Dallas office with just 10 users. Now there are also 12 mobile users who will travel all around the world, accompanied by their faithful laptops, of course. Now 5 of the 80 users in Chicago will telecommute from their homes. Now, if you're thinking, huh? What did that all mean? Let me see if I can make this a little bit easier for you. There we go. Put a picture on the screen, right? So up here we have the New York office where we have 6 servers and 500 Vista clients. And then down here in the Chicago office, we have 3 servers running with 75 Windows XP clients. And then of course, here are the 5 telecommuters. And if you're not familiar with the term telecommuter, all that really means is that they work from home and they need to some way, somehow make connection into their local office from home. Okay, but that's what telecommuter means, is working from another location than the actual office. Now over here in Tokyo, we have a couple of servers and 50 Vista clients. We have our small Dallas branch office with just the 1 server and 10 Vista clients. You will notice that 3 of the offices have a direct line of communication with the internet, and then the Dallas office communicates via the Chicago office. And then of course we can't forget out here we have our 12 mobile users who are traveling all around the world with their laptop computers and will have to connect to the internet through their individual local location depending on where they may be. And we'll explain how that all works when we get into the course. Now, what are you going to need if you want to follow along? Well, you will see on my desktop as we go through this course these 14 different computers. Now, these are 14 different computers which are kind of a representation of the 640 that we have throughout the Global Mantix network. Now, you don't need to have 14 computers to follow along. You will need a handful, and this handful can be done through virtualization if you're familiar with that. And if you're not, well, you could also go to the virtualization video and I'll explain it to you. Now, something I will share with you when we get into the installation video is that primarily what you're going to need is you're going to need a domain controller for New York, 1 for Chicago, and 1 for Dallas. Okay, and those are going to be kind of your 3 core computers that you will run throughout most of this course. And then each of the rest of these we may bring into the picture as we go through the course and even revisit a computer now and again. As a matter of fact, I will tell you what, this guy right here, New York Member 1, is another computer that I know that we will use many times throughout the course. Now, I will go over this in more detail when we go into the next video with installation, because we'll actually install New York DC1. We'll actually get that going right from scratch. So really, what do you need? Well, you either need a handful of 4 or 5 computers that you can use. They don't have to be super high-end computers. Obviously, the faster they are and the more resources they have available, the easier this might be. But as long as they meet the minimum requirements for Windows Server 2008, you're okay. Now, if you don't have 4 or 5 computers laying around, well, you just need 1 decent computer which would have the resources to allow you to run 4 or 5 virtual computers. Now, this is the actual desktop to the computer that I'm working on right now. And I wanted to show you this because I'd mentioned that you will see these different icons, I think it's 14 different icons on the screen. And what these are shortcuts, basically. They're not technically shortcuts. They're called remote desktop connection icons. And these remote desktop connection icons represent a connection that I will remotely make to each of the various computers when we need to access them. Now, if you don't understand what all this means, don't worry, because I'm going to actually go over that with you as part of the course. But I just want you to understand what you're looking at as you follow along with me in this course. You will see me regularly come to this desktop, and I will explain which computer or computers we're going to connect to. And then when I do, you will see the desktop for that computer come up on the screen after I click on the various icons. All right, well, are you ready to get started learning about Windows Server 2008 server administration? Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and get started then. I will see you in video 2 where we're going to get started talking about installing Windows Server 2008.